Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. We'll resume our very busy day and the Works and Infrastructure etc. meeting open. Welcome to councillors, staff, the team from Alliance and Susan. Welcome here today. Thanks everybody for your attendance. Any apologies specifically? No. Anybody for public forum? No one's been notified. All good. Anything to be put on the agenda not notified? Oh, yes. Hamish is just, oh, that's a good idea. Just to let you know, this meeting has been recorded, and a special welcome to Hamish, his first official meeting. So good to have you on board, Hamish, and look forward to all of us working with you going forward. Any declarations of conflict of interest? No, that is good. So if we could have a mover and a seconder that we receive the meetings. Eva and Era, all in favour? We'll just flick through those councillors page by page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. Nothing out there. Some of those matters will come up during the course of this meeting, of course, so we'll have a chance to chat about those. So if we get on with, we'll get on with the. Sorry.
That's going to be reviewed, I'm sure we can take meeting.
No, that's true. It is. So we'll have a mover and a seconder, Peter and Steve. All in favour of? Motion. Thanks, councillors. Right, we move on to reports. We'll move on to 7.1. All in your hands, Hamish. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Kerry, and thank you for the welcome. I would like to present this paper largely as read. We do have some of the authors in the room, so if there are any questions specifically on those sections, please feel free to let us know and we can do our best to answer them.
Just like to take it as read and we'll get the questions from you, Hamish. That's great. Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this is the right place to raise it or if we should be raising it when we get to the project reports, but kind of fits under section 4, the Three Waters side. So you can let me know if you'd rather it be addressed down there. I guess it's a bit of a question and a statement. So I noticed further along when we look at the Eketahuna wastewater treatment plant, the budget line has increased from $6 million to $10 million, which equates to approximately $40,000 per connection for a 7-year consent. I guess, wanted to make sure that we had that noted in there, that had changed. But I guess just to make it really clear that amount, in my opinion, is just completely unaffordable. So it's completely unaffordable for our ratepayers to be servicing that amount. Now, I did see it with alarm when I was looking at the papers, and I did flick an email through. So perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, either to Hamish or to the Chief Executive. But yeah, just keen for your thoughts on that.
We're going to bring that up, Councillor Scott, so we'll deal with it now.
Sure. Certainly while it's out there, and we'll have a quick chat about that now. So the change in the dollar figure isn't a reflection of the final design. So at the stage, we're still working through different options for Eketahuna, and one of the options is $10 million. That may not be the most palatable option, and it may not be the one we land on. Certainly once we've workshopped it with the council, and hopefully reasonably soon. So while that was flagged as a potential, I don't think that'll be the one we land on, but certainly don't want to preempt the process. So that makes you feel more comfortable.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for that explanation. I I guess just want to add support to that I think it's something that this council does need to consider, all this committee, and to work our way through to see if we can find some other options. And I think we can sort of leave nothing off the table when it comes to that sort of cost. It's was quite horrifying. So just wanted to support that and say definitely I would want it to be dug into further with us as a group. Thanks, Hamish.
Thanks, councillor. So we'll just, councillor Mike, Peter and Nona. That all?
Chair Perry, I too I was going to bring that up when that came up later on. But while we're discussing that, I too was apprehensive about that budget there for such a small number of connections to that. And I wonder if we need to be reassessing or looking at alternatives. Thank you.
Peter?
Thanks, Chair. Kerry, yeah, similarly, I had came as a bit of a fright, that figure. But firstly, Hamish, thanks very much for a very complete report. There's a lot of information in here I've never seen before. So you have to be congratulated. On page 13, there's talk about protozoa levels and meeting, 180, 170 out of 180 or 2 months out of 6 months residual disinfection of chloride and so on. What does that mean in reality? I mean, is it just because the bar's been lifted? And these sorts of situations have occurred for years and years and years, but now that the testing levels have been increased, these things are showing up that perhaps shouldn't, or what's the story?
Thanks, Councillor Peter, for the question. I think you've probably sort of answered your own question there a little bit. Yes, so nothing has changed specifically with the water supply. It's more the testing that's involved now and some of the standards that have been raised through the changes in regulation. So it's a challenge for us to work through as to how we move towards being compliant across the board. But I think that's probably going to be a bit of a process, unfortunately.
Supplementary question. Thanks, Hamish. Are we likely to get pinged by the water regulator if we don't meet these levels?
I haven't had any direct conversations with them personally, and it'll probably be a question for Roger to answer. And unfortunately, he's at the Waters Conference today, but I could get back to you on that one if that's okay. Just to explain what our risk levels are of being a little bit non-compliant in that space.
I just asked or be reminded if we had already in a previous meeting given a few million to both the Eke Tahuna and Paeatua wastewater treatment for this. Has that already been put into that budget?
I'd like to pass that on to Brian if I'm sorry, it was certainly before my time.
Did you hear the question? Yeah.
Through you, Chair Kerry. Good question, Councillor Chase. So effectively for this year through the LTP, those were the budgeted figures. But we sort of highlighted an issue, I guess, at the beginning of the year that it was highly likely that that amount wasn't sufficient enough. So we haven't, so we still haven't landed on the final design for the Eke Tahuna upgrades, but certainly anything over and above that $1 million figure does need to come back to council for a council resolution, and then obviously that will be debt funded.
So this increases on top of the amount that we've already allocated earlier on? No. Yeah.
Well, yeah, just whatever that increase will be at the moment, but there will be an increase, and that's what we've highlighted. Probably that 10 million figure should have probably said anything from 2 to 10 as we work through what that final design might look like. So we are talking to other people, as Hamish said, around some other solutions. We're worried that, there's so much work going on in 3 water space across the country that, these designs seem to be getting more and more expensive as the market demands for all of them as well. So we don't need the gold-plated solution. We'll probably just need to ensure that we can meet those consent requirements though. So we are definitely looking into that a lot more.
Thanks, Brian. Perhaps vice, it's apparent, isn't it, when we're looking at what's happening in Queenstown with the protozoa problem, and they've received, I think, compliance notices from Taumata Atawai. I think I saw that in the paper. So perhaps if we make a point of popping it into our next agenda for this meeting, just to see what we're going to do. Important around protozoa and bacterial levels. So if that's comfortable, make that an important issue next time, Hamish. Brian.
Just said that, so what we're doing very well is with Taumata Atawai is we're keeping them in the loop of all of the challenges that we have. You would have met Barbara, who's our compliance, water compliance operator officer at the moment, who's doing a really good job. So she has come over from the Ministry of Health, and obviously Ministry of Health, we're the regulator prior. So, and as Peter's rightly pointed out, we're really lifting our game in that space. So, you know, that communications, having the plans and us, you know, presenting those to Taumata Atawai has been really important, but certainly having her in that role has added value.
And I think answering your questions, no doubt all around the table, the levels in those project reports are concerning. But I guess politically, Three Waters has changed, hasn't it? And our ability to fund these challenges in Tararua is going to be considerably, there's more debate around our LTP, isn't it? For all of us, Brian and his team and us ourselves. So Raj would have noted that too, I'm sure. Just what we're going to do. So thanks very much. Oh, sorry. Steve?
Yeah, just a quick one on 4.3. What's the latest update on that? Are we doing the same, or we've changed something magically?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we've managed to deal with the immediate issue there, which was around the membranes not self-cleaning, not being suitable the way they've been managed. So what we've done is changed the cleaning process, the timing and that sort of thing a little bit, and the guys are doing an investigation into how we got to that point without realising somewhat. So that investigation is going to come back as a report through to the council.
Yes, councillors, I just want to concur that thanks for Ruth's report, Hamish, actually. So any more discussion on Hamish's report, councillors? Great. And that's very well, Hamish. So if we move on to, oh yes, we're going to do the proper performance aspects, Ellie. So can I move in a second that we pass 1.1? Thanks, Councillor Scott and Councillor Michael. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Thanks, councillors. If we move on to 7.2, transfer station. Joe and Mark. Welcome, Mark and Joe. In your hands, Joe or Mark.
For you, Chair Kerry, I put this report together on behalf of Jo, due to the fact that she's been incredibly busy, and as you can read through the report, there's been a large amount of work done in a reasonably short period of time. This report is for your information, and obviously for myself to take any questions or pass on any further information as we go through. And Jo will give us a bit of an update. And Jo will give us a bit of an update on where we're actually at. It's a really rapid changing the situation. And from the time of writing the report to now, a few things have actually happened and continuing on. So we've taken on the transfer stations as a in-house delivered service. This may have been mentioned previously and you may have been aware of this already. What I would like to reiterate is that the service is unchanged. It's the same service, but we are delivering it rather than via a contracted service. The budgets are unchanged. So from a financial perspective, there is no change from now through till the end of this financial year. And obviously, as we move into the new NLTP, as we look at services and what we do deliver, we will look at those costs as normal as part of our LTP deliberations. One of the things I would like to highlight is obviously through this change of service, while the service itself is unchanged and the finances are unchanged, the customer interface is now a council interface. Whilst on the face of things, these things seem to be no change. Having gone through this process previously myself a couple of times, the fact that when you're dealing with a contractor or when you're dealing with a council staff member from the public, there is a general perception change. From some very rough numbers put together early this morning, we figured that there's around about 3,000 customer interactions that will take place per month at these transfer stations. These are our ratepayers and customers who are having an interaction with a council staff member. And that is the fundamental change of what we're actually doing through here. The focus on the customers and the ability in future, as we go into our next NLTP, to be able to look at some of the different services and additions that we can actually make will be some of the conversations that we'll be having with yourselves through that. The ability to be more agile in these interfaces and how we deal with the customers is seen as the major point moving forward with this. And I would like to congratulate Jo on the amount of work that she has done to date. I would also like to congratulate the likes of Raj, Jess, our HR, Mike, to be able to do the amount of work and set up this in a month is what I would have done in other councils previously over a year or so. Hence, I'm writing the report and assisting while Jo is still taking phone calls to organise loaders and the like. But the support around us within council, I would like to congratulate the staff. It's been phenomenal to have the amount of people and getting background in the service historically, because obviously as we take the service over, there are assets that were ours, there are assets that were theirs. There's contract negotiation. This is not an easy, there is some reasonably complex legal questions, which Jess has always been at the end of the phone for straight away. So I would like to congratulate that. So the behaviour change is the major part we're trying to look at here for the future. How we do things, how we can have our customers interact with us, as well as how we can recycle and do more in that space. I would like to hand over to Jo just to run through some of the complexity that we have been dealing with. And I must say, you know, her phone's been going hot continually from organising work boots to job descriptions. Jo?
Thanks very much, Mark.
Thanks to you, Kerry. Just in regards to, what we've done in the last sort of 4 to 5 weeks has been everything from engaging potential staff to interviews to pest control, health and safety being a main focus with spill kit management, fire extinguishers, all that sort of stuff, right through to, yes, the budget side of things. Raj needs to know all that stuff. And liaising with our different teams within council to action all these as we go. But yeah, just knowing that safety, health and safety of staff and public is paramount with this takeover. But our main focus at the end result is going to be to drive behaviour change in the community with our waste minimisation targets that are going to be, you know, lifted and raised and set by MFE at a later date. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be a smooth running from here.
Thanks, Jo and Mark. We'll just look around the council's table. So start with Councillor Peter.
Gary, yeah, thanks, Jo. It is part of the intention of bringing it in-house to enable those at the transfer stations to talk to people and say, look, that should have been, that's not for tipping, that's for recycling, and trying to educate people.
It's definitely about educating them. With a contractor in place, you've got third party access to the staff, so you don't really have the ability to drive it through the staff. Whereas with the staff as TDC staff members, we can actually train and educate them into how to approach the public and get them to change their behaviour. And of course, some don't want to. But they're going to pay for it at the weighbridge if they don't change their behaviour. So, but there's a lot of people that want to recycle and don't know how to, or don't know if what they're doing is right.
Peter? Sorry, Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and yeah, I'll add congratulations into the immense amount of work and getting it off the ground so quickly from when we first heard of it being a concept to delivery. It's no mean feat. One thing I did just want to, I guess, double check on and just make sure we have an assurance on is around the health and safety piece. We had a very brief sort of offline conversation about this before, but when we do move at speed, sometimes that can introduce different risks that we haven't considered. And I note that our health and safety officer is currently on leave. So just want to make sure that we're being rigorous with our health and safety process because it's quite a high risk activity that we have. So if you could just add some comments to that, I'd be grateful.
We're actually reviewing at the moment an external consultant for health and safety around making sure that we've got your basic risk registers on site, SOPs, method and risk measuring, what can and has in past or at other transfer stations has happened along the way. I actually also have a fair bit of experience in the document writing as far as that goes, and also management of sites where things have happened. So there's even more risk than what the staff on the ground are aware of. So yeah, there is a bit of experience in regards to that stuff as to what can happen and catering for it before it occurs, as you would call it. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. Councillor Shearer?
Chair Keary. Well done. It's nice to come to meetings and hear something positive that's happened so quickly, and I certainly endorse the very positive feedback you've been providing, Mark. In 8.2, there's a comment there about there is the possibility of unforeseen issues arising, and when something happens at speed like this, it's something acceptable. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, Joe, when you're thinking and your brain's still going, are there any unforeseen circumstances and or consequences that could possibly come of this? And I'm thinking, you've talked long and loud about behavioural changes as one of the big reasons and the context behind this. But is there something that in the back of your mind you're thinking that could possibly go badly if we don't do such and such? Is there any other sort of risks that's tinkering through your mind at 2 o'clock in the morning on this?
No, there's a fair bit going through my mind, but no, there's not. It's not actually. I suppose what makes the whole thing a lot more reassuring and at ease is that we're actually onboarding the existing staff that are currently doing it now. 3 out of 5 of them have actually been working there for years, which I previously worked there with them as well. So I know their ability and their knowledge to date. It's more just probably increasing their knowledge and interaction with public around the do's and don'ts of recycling and encouraging it more, because it will cost over the weighbridge if they don't. Yeah.
So further to that, Chair Keary, and I'm glad Jess is in the room and having Mark comment that we appreciate her input. The onboarding of those staff, there's no contractual hangovers from the previous that is likely to produce a red flag for us. I mean, I know what employment transfers of.
The process that we've followed is actually we're taking them on as TDC employees starting from scratch. So we aren't inheriting any of the hangovers.
Variations of.
Nope.
Thank you.
Councillor Steve.
Thank you, Chair Kerry. Yeah, just a quick one. Yeah, congratulations. So your work will change in certain aspects of the way you're doing it down there at the moment?
No, I wouldn't say that we're changing how we're doing it. It's more about more interaction with the customers. That's really what we focused on.
Now, the reason I say this, this is an observation. And this is only involves Dannyworks kiosk. Most people dump things on or recycle things on a Saturday or Sunday. And I know it's double fees and all the rest of it, but if you go down there, it's chocker. And the last time we went down there, they said, "I just throw it over there. We'll sort it later." So I'm just trying to help you here. It's just an observation, you know. Maybe pay some more money and to the staff. I don't know. I don't know the answer. That's not my business. But yeah, it's just an observation because I think a lot of people want to get into this recycling thing, but when you get down there and you got nowhere to put it, you kind of feel, wow.
You're referring more to the recycled dock bin that's on site down there, is that right? That's chockers full, is that what you're?
One outside the gate.
Yeah. Okay, so the idea there is that we're gonna need to get that serviced regularly or probably religiously on a Friday to ensure that it's clear for the weekend, whether it's full or not.
But you'll monitor it, so even if it's, you know what I mean?
Monitor it, yes.
Yeah, 'cause obviously, the other habit, which I really get annoyed with, most of Dannyworks goes to the dump at 5 to 4, which I feel really bad for the staff, you know? And that really, and you know, because then they get there and because poor buggers it's got everywhere. So yeah, no, that's all I'm saying about monitoring. Yeah, thanks.
I just add to that, I'll make to add to that. Obviously, the keeping everything exactly as it is now is the first part of the process. As we move forward, we'll be obviously going through the AMP for solid waste. And this gives us a really good opportunity to take on board items like you've said, Councillor Steve, and I'll also look at how we actually manage within that. So that customer interaction, whilst it's currently through the kiosk, actually gives us a broader opportunity to actually see how we can serve the community and what their actual needs are. And if there is a very strong drive to recycling, we can easily move towards that. Now, if there's a stronger drive towards green waste or something like that, we can drive towards that. So the ability to be agile, I think, is the key point going forward with this.
Thanks very much, Mark and Joe. I think I just endorse the comments around the table. That's a terrific job done in a very, very compressed time frame. And this is a very costly and publicly focused service for the council. I think we've commented around this table on a few times in recent 6 months. So I think we're very happy where you've gone and where we're heading here. So well done, Joe and Mark. Thanks very much for that. So Councillor Square, do you have a move and a seconder to adopt Councillor Sharon and Naoma? All in favour of 1.1? Thanks. Carried. Thanks very much. Well done.
Thank you to all our teams as well. I couldn't have done it without you. Raj, Jess, especially you, Mark, leaving my sidekick.
We'll all tick off then, Rand. Right, team. We'll move on to something not quite so exciting, but. Not to me, but others to me. It's the interim speed benefit plan, which is in, I shouldn't say that, Wilson, because it is exciting. We've got a lot of work with this hearing. Very quick move backwards. All yours, Mark and Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Cherry. Mr. Chair. I'm actually very, very passionate about this paper, and please forgive me if I sermonize at some stage through this. It's something I actually started probably about 8 years ago at a different council, and it's been incredibly difficult to get through. I realized that safer speeds, actually, and safety in general, whether it be TTM, putting up barriers between wire rope barriers and the like, it's incredibly contentious with a lot of our people out there. However, I have an incredibly strong professional view, which actually matches my personal view on this. The inconvenience for many, for a small inconvenience to save one life, I think is worth it. I read through this paper, and obviously we've been through the consultation, and the point of this paper is to approve the interim speed management guide. In my opinion, I believe this is the most minimum requirement that we could ever do. We are covering off on the existing signs that are currently out there and legalizing what is currently on the ground. We are installing buffer zones between the 100 Ks where they actually meet a state highway. So as you come into the state highway, you approach the correct speed. And in front of our schools, and we are to meet the measure of 40% of the schools by the end of the year, which is the minimum requirement for us to achieve. In that case, I highly recommend that this is adopted. Taking on board the consultation process that we've been through, Wilson has discussed with iwi. We haven't received feedback back, but I've spoken personally to Lorraine myself just to ensure that has gone through. We've spoken to each of the schools and obviously letter drops and the like as well. The feedback that we've received is, I won't say unanimously, but generally the same in the yays and the nays, that the speed signs themselves aren't enough to change behaviours. And a lot have actually requested not just the speed zones, but other measures. It's our intention as we go forward, once these are actually installed on a case-by-case basis, we can actually review any of the other measures, the physical measures, beyond the signs themselves. And I think that's basically it from there. But like I said, in this paper, it is the most minimum.
Or get councillors ask questions. Any comments, Wilson, from yourself, just regarding the paper?
Thanks, Chair Kerry. No, I think pretty much Mark's covered it all there. Like you said, with the basically this is the minimum for now. There is other infrastructure tools that we could rock out, but that's obviously going to involve more money. And the mandate for the start off was to just try and get speed zones in and see how we go with compliance from there.
Thank you. So we'll start. We go Sharon, Scott, Mike, and then we'll go to the right.
If we look at the speed limit changes around Coast Road, Ekatio, Wilson and Mark, through you, Chair Kerry, I'm just so grateful that you're extending that 50k area. My question is, who did you have to consult with, anyone in particular or any group in particular? I know you did that with the schools, but for that community, this will have a very important meaning because it will also apply to the beach, I'm assuming. Every time we have issues on the beach at Christmas time, the police have always said, well, whatever's on that road, this is part of the road and therefore the speed limits. So A, who did you consult with, Wilson? And B, I'm assuming it will apply to the whole of the beach as well.
I think that's through Chair Kerry. Thanks, Councillor Wards. The actual consultation was, I believe, was through the local community board out there, or the community association came back with that. Last year, you may remember, we put some temporary speed humps out there as well to try and help slow things down. But this in particular just brings as you well know, the 50k begins just over the Ekatio River Bridge, which has never been ratified in regulation. It was only just shift it down there and see how it goes. So basically, as far as this goes, it's just to bring that into line and into the new register, which NZTA has now. It's not such a gazetted, but the NZTA has a register. So that'll just bring that into line, make it able to be
dealt with compliant wise if the police happen to be out there. And it will include right along the beach. So, yep, so the 50K will be up the hill where it is now on Coast Road and at the bridge and at the whole lot. And there is still, opportunities to put other calming things in like we did last time as a temporary measure. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks, Wilson. Scott, I think you had a.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just quickly, I think I would always support a variable speed limit, but understand that they're cost prohibitive. So yeah, I'm quite glad that we got some more information on that. One thing I'm curious about though is on Saturday we've had a change of government, and I know that we are doing this because I guess it's hit our agenda because we have to. Particularly around the land transport rule of setting of speed limits. And it's something that the incoming government, I think all three potential parties of the incoming government have suggested they might be making some changes to that land transport rule. I wonder whether it would be wise to wait and see what the requirements are going to be. They may change within the next 100 days. That was on their 100-day agenda. Before we sort of jump in and adopt something that perhaps we might have to re-look at within a couple of months. Has any consideration been given to that?
Through Chair Keary again, thanks, Councillor Scott. Yeah, I guess obviously the new Prime Minister-elect has indicated that that's one of the things he would throw out. Back when Prime Minister Hipkins took over in January, he basically threw the speed thing out the window apart from the top 1% of the worst roads, but kept the school zones, school speed zones and things in place. So I guess it's a bit pie in the sky on what's going to happen. The thing is that this mandate now to get through NZTA has to be done by February to ratify this, which is inside that 100 days anyway. So while we can probably wonder about that, I think Mark's going to allude to some stuff around a more full speed management plan that might have to be done in the future. That's probably more going to affect that. And just personally, I think that we really want to be pushing back on doing it around schools and the areas that have already got those speed zones in place. We're not actually changing anything else really.
Yeah. Thank Wilson. Councillor Mike.
Through you, Chair Keary. Mark, around these schools particularly, it doesn't matter what the government does. If you can reduce one accident around a school, I'll sign a document with you. Yep. The other thing was, do you have radar that you could temporarily put up around intersectional schools where these are going to occur? And the other thing was, did you consult with the police?
Through Chair Keary again, Councillor Mike. Yes, we sent all the documents in through with Constable Maxine. We were on the Road Safety Committee and the school liaison person, and I also had a meeting with Maxine early on when we were first bringing the plans together for a couple of hours and went through it school by school and with her issues as well as well as meeting with all the schools personally way back in the process. So for that, and sorry, but it must be on early onset dementia. What was the first part again? Oh, the radar. Sorry, radar. I guess we don't have radar, no, but what we have done and still continue to do around all the district is, and you will have seen them, is the tapes across the road, which give traffic counters, but they also give us speed data of vehicles crossing all those. So, but through your likes of your TomTom, Navmans, GPS phones, all those sorts of things, Big Brother can see all the stuff, and all the roads throughout the country have actually been mapped about what the average speeds are on all of them anyway, from all the data that's collected from those. And from the last time when Charlotte French came from GHD, you might remember she put a graphic up, was around the Dannyvic Township, and pretty much all of our side streets other than like Millers Road, High Street, Queen Street, were pretty much average speed was 30 kilometres an hour anyway. So.
Thank you. Thanks, Wilson. Councillor Peter and then Simon.
Thanks, Chair, Kerry. Thanks, Mark and Wilson. The Woodville School's on a state highway. I take it that this becomes the responsibility of Waka Kotahi, not council, to do whatever they're going to do. Put the signage in.
Chair Kerry again, thanks Councillor Peter. Yes, you're right, although I have priced up the install of the Waka Kotahi portion of the install for Woodville School. And that's just sitting with them for approval, and when it comes around to the time for Woodville School to be done. But so we will probably install the infrastructure for them if they're happy with that, but they will be maintaining their stuff there. So, and also on that, the state highways, so Huria Range, Woodville, Mangatanoka School, they will have variable speed zones on the state highway, so they'll be operative at the times around the school. So about 8:30 to 9:15 and 2:45 to 3:30 or something like that. That we'll negotiate with the schools once we get to see how their students and school community reacts of the times, and that'll be programmed for that. But the side streets around all of those schools will be a permanent 30k. Ronnie?
Further to that, is it intended that the electronic signage, if it's variable speed for certain hours, in other words, on and use Vogel Street or State Highway in Woodville on a Saturday or Sunday, you go 80 for half of it, then down to 50, and for a couple of 100 meters, 30, back up to 50 again. That's going to be confusing for people, and it's going to be a perfect place for a cop to sit and ping people, and that's unfair. And therefore, there needs to be electronic signage that can be flash during those hours or during the week, but not in the weekend.
Once again, Councillor Cherry, Peter, yes, you did right. The electronic signs are programmed. They can be done by SMS text or plug in with a laptop, controlled, timed and set up so that they will only operate. They work on a sensor for sensing the traffic coming. So they will flash only through those times. So say it's 8:30 to 9:15, it'll only be operative 8:30 to 9:15, Monday to Friday. And also with the programming, it will not happen during school holidays. It will just remain blank, won't operate at all. It'll be continue as a 50km/h stretch through there. Mangatanoka will be 70 or 60, whatever. Well done.
Thanks, Wilson. Councillor.
Through you, Chair. Can I ask why preschools and kindergartens weren't considered?
Councillor Ferry again. Councillor Naima, to be fair, I don't know on that. We were from the literature and stuff from Waka Kotahi, NZTA, focused on the schools and Te Kura Kaupapa at this stage. There was sort of, that was like first cab off the rank, I guess. Second cab, they were talking about the likes of marae, possibly kindergartens, preschools, health facilities in town CBDs and stuff like that. So that's one of those ones that's probably going to be up in the air with what the new government decides to do. But it's my thoughts there. I guess while it's probably not the I'm not sure what the word is, but a lot of those institutions are privately run, so that as well, or privately owned. So I guess that may be why it doesn't quite feature to start with.
Thanks, Wilson. Councillor.
Interesting point, because when you looked at it in the initial stages, it was like a typical the government of the day, a one size fits all policy for the entire country. When we talk about preschools, I understood right from the get-go that it was more about facilities where children walk or bike to and from school. And that's why they've made it those particularly, as opposed to like a daycare centre would be parent definitely picking up, dropping off, and not going to be walking home. That also applies to places like Alfredton. I mean, Alfredton, there's not a single child that can walk to that school because they don't live close enough. So that's out in the middle of a high, well, it's one of our roads, and that speed limit's going to be reduced down to that when there's no children who walk to and from that school. So, that was the hard part with the whole thing. And I think that's what National also talked about, was that it was across the board, regardless of location, in terms of population and use.
Chair Carey. You do it once and just try. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the issue is quite simply, and we just mentioned protozoa before and various things with local government. Sometimes you have to mandate something across everything because no one's going to actually do it themselves. I think if this hadn't come up, would we be having this debate and changing any signs? So sometimes you end up catching all the fish just to catch a few of the ones you actually want. If this wasn't mandated, and when it wasn't, and it was a guide 8 years ago, when I actually went through this several times with several councils, not one street sign actually got changed. We discussed unsealed roads, of which we won't discuss at this table. We discussed schools, which we have done because it was mandated and we were forced to. At no stage have we actually done anything off our own bat. I apologise for that. Well, I don't actually.
Yes, sir.
Kerry, councillor Ellison, just into that, just Alfredton School in particular, that's going to be a variable zone. That one, it's not permanent there, so that'll be just during the school hours or what suits the school the best. All righty.
Thanks, Chair Carey. It's more of an observation. In the States, you're not allowed to pass a school bus, a stationary school bus. So if you're driving along the road and the bus stops, you got to stop. Doesn't matter what speed. It could be 100 k's an hour. You stop. I nearly got caught one day. Yeah, that was a rule. But however, it's something that perhaps should happen here. I don't know, but I think I'm in full support of the whole idea, as long as those lights are put in.
Thanks, councillor Peter. Speed obviously has been a worry concern of yours through a few of these meetings, so it's good that you've given it a tick off. So. Everybody happy with that? So thanks very much, Mark and Wilson, for that. So councillors, we have a recommendation 1.1 and 1.2. Second, so Scott, sorry, Michael, that into Deputy Urina, all in favour? Aye. Against? Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Baby's been.
Let's get it. Thank you very much.
Well done.
So councillors, we'll move on to 7.4. 7.4, grading recovery, which I think is Mark again, is it? Yes, I think it is. So, and Blake, is it? Afternoon, Blake. And all in your. Thank you.
Chair Carey, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Carey. This is our update on emergency works. This is basically in 4 parts. Blake will go through in regards to our practical recovery, and for all those who noted his boots, he has been out there actively doing things. I'll run through quickly on the NZTA funding. Also the Build Back Better. It was a question asked here a couple of times. I thought it'd be best to clarify. And then lastly, audit. We can go through this all at once or in 4 parts at your discretion, Chair Carey. I think, councillor, should we go through it all at once and then we'll come back to the bits. Are you happy with that, mate? Excellent. Okay, I'll hand over to Blake to run through the practical part of our recovery and where we're up to at the moment. Thanks, mate.
Obviously with Cyclone Gabrielle happening, we've got a lot of physical works happening out there from now on going forward. So to do this, there's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So what the way things run basically is we do a categorization of our network faults that we've got out there into a complexity. So we've got low complexity, medium complexity, and high complexity. So the lower complexity issues that are happening out there are the ones that we can react to reasonably quickly. So that the slips, trees down, debris on the road, that sort of stuff. Then we get our medium complexities that are a little bit more complex. They may need a little site sketch, a little bit of design and geotechnical testing, and then our high complexity jobs that we need to really get a thorough design to build back better and to look at what we're doing there. So from this we developed a prioritization matrix. So this basically takes subjectivity away from where we need to put our focus. So this is basically the severity of the impact on the asset, so the risk of deterioration and losing access to the community, community and economic impacts. So what does that road service? How many people are up that road? And then the traffic count and vehicle usage of that carriageway. So all these things come into effect as a physical number as to where we should put our focus first to try and get better access and safer access back. So in behind the scenes, we've been having key stakeholder discussions. So this is with Waka Kotahi, NZTA, Regional Council, local iwi, and the council. So we just have a Thursday fortnightly session where we basically talk about what we're going to do, where our focus is put, and basically go over some of the designs that have been drafted just so we can get across everybody as to what we're going to build back. So then everyone has a say basically at that point in time and can make changes if they need to be made. We've also got Malua Watson on board. So she's our stakeholder and communications manager. So she has been doing comms for over 20 years, a lot of experience there. So she's going to jump on board. She's been on for now, I think 3 or 4 weeks. So you should have a lot more communication coming out to everybody within this room, to the community about what's going to be happening out on the network. Because I'm very sure there is going to be a lot of stuff happening over the summer construction season. So River Road, Coast Road, all the communities out there that have been impacted, there'll be work happening and they need to know what's going on. So that's quite important that happens. We're trying to be a bit smart about how we build back better as well, because we do understand procurement of materials and supply partners is short because this cyclone's affected basically from us north, Coromandel and Auckland. So we are looking local first as much as we can, but we have cast the net a little bit wider just to get things across the line a bit quicker, get the build back done a bit quicker. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment. Hopefully I've summarised up what we're up to, but any questions? Go away.
That's a share.
You know I'm going to say something anyway, so. Firstly, Blake, I haven't seen you since we opened the Marinanga Gorge, and I want to sincerely thank you because you weren't in attendance that day, but I know all the reasons why you've got dirty boots, and I just want to commend the efforts that you put into managing the community's expectations and keeping them informed. So that's a personal thank you from me to you regarding that. There are some comments in here, Mark and or Blake, that I mean, you phrased it in your executive summary beautifully, Mark, in terms of hinting that some of the work, if I've interpreted it right, some of the work we did in the heat of the moment that might not have necessarily gone through all of the due process of approval. You've hinted that some of that documentation is now missing. So are those and I reflect on a David Monk conversation at the Pongaroa pub, a few days after Cyclone, when Lorraine and I were out there, that, they were out there and they're digger into hell with whether or not council approved it, blah, 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 but they're getting stuff done. So are you hinting that might have come back to kick us in the proverbial, or is it not really the issue that you're kind of trying to reflect on?
Through you, Chair Kerry, that's one of the issues that was raised through the audit, and obviously, like I said, there's 4 parts. If I'll get to that last at the end, but very, very quickly, within the audit went exceptionally well. There was only 2 invoices that actually, as part of the entire works throughout the whole cyclone, 2 invoices were found to be, I won't say incorrect, but needed clarification. It was a phenomenal effort in the fact that going through it with and just seeing the amount of work that Ray Cannon had put in, there were just spreadsheets and spreadsheets of work. The issue was actually outside the Alliance. There was 2 invoices that were queried, and because the work was ordered through the recovery team rather than the Alliance, one was with a contractor who was isolated at the end of a road, and he worked his way out. The difficulty with that is because of that, within the system, you have dispatches or work orders, and then that matches up with the work that was done. That couldn't be done because as they came out, they hadn't taken photos or recorded the sites that they'd worked on. So that's purely I guess, administrative error, and very easily resolved. And there was one in which there was a contractor who their trading name was different to their actual company name. And this actually shows the level of depth that they went into. And both of those were, I guess, authorized directly from the EOC to them. And one of them was not a registered contractor, I believe, as part of the Alliance. So therefore, the Alliance couldn't engage them directly within their own systems. The contractor panel and the way in which that we're changing procurement, and I'll get to that when I get to my report, alleviates that as well. But I saw Matt wanted to.
Yeah, Matt. So.
If I could just jump in there quickly through you, Chair Kerry, through to Sharon, just to, I suppose, summarise a bit of the question you're answering, and with what Mark's referred to in the report. A lot of the repairs we've done to date have been temporary. So the initial response, reactive repairs to get the network operating again, to minimise that deterioration, et cetera, So as we transition, and we're sort of in that transition as we speak through into a planned response and looking at permanent repairs on these high cost and potentially high risk sites, there will be quite a thorough process to go through to satisfy Waka Kotahi and council as well, around benefit cost ratios and stuff like that. And an easy example is the likes of the Kaitaia Bridge. There's going to be quite a thorough process we need to go through there. But with what we've done to date, and as Mark alluded to through the stuff, there's no concerns whatsoever.
So the reactivity at the time hasn't put at risk the
No, and that's
payment of, sorry, Chair Kerry, through you, yeah, just touch on it.
yeah, so I suppose to add to that now, and that's the reason why Waka Kotahi I guess enabled that funding nice and quickly for us. It was at 100% subsidy as well, so that we could stabilise the network. They accepted that us, along with multiple other councils, were in a reactive state. So there was, I suppose you'd call it a bit of leniency there. Thank you.
Yes, gentlemen. Mark.
So through you, Mr. Chair. It's a lovely segue into the NZTA funding component of it. Obviously, we've received our funding at 100% FAR. That funding assistance rate goes through to the 30th of June. So one of the major issues for us will be movement as we move into the new NLTP. Should there not be a extension or a another 100% FAR given, and it's my opinion that will probably be quite unlikely, then that funding rate will drop back to our normal emergency works funding rate, which we do get an increase into the new NLTP, well, our LTP and LTP for NZTA into that period. And going up that 4% actually does work out a lot better for us. So we end up, once we spend 10% of what our maintenance budget is. Then we get the enhanced FAR, which gives us an extra 20%. Once we start working on that, that still leaves us 7% short of 100%. So for us at the moment, and Blake has alluded to it, what we need to try and do is push on with as much of the emergency works at 100% as fast as we can. Obviously, that is not about spending money willy-nilly. The processes that we're putting in place, the prioritization matrix, allows some of the more minor jobs to be done right now while we're working on the other jobs. The procurement panel that we're putting together brings in a larger amount of contractors from a local basis able to be deployed into some of that work. Where they may not have the systems, where previously that may have excluded them from working within the Alliance, where they can work under a larger contractor, that gives us more local resources. However, in that, where we can't do this locally, to expedite the work, we will need to look broader to bring in resources wherever we could. We hadn't sort of considered this previously, but the longer term savings of maximizing the 100% up to the 30th of June is the best option for us going forward. The next part was the Build Back Better, of which we've had several questions, and I myself and most of us have been quite grey around for a period of time. I've had quite a few conversations within NZTA recently to try and clarify this. In the actual guidance notes itself, the guidance notes actually say that anything that is basically larger, not on the same alignment, and any major change to what we're actually putting back is classed as a resilience project and only funded under the 72%, but without the extra 20%. So I've actually gone back to try and help clarify this through the actual NZTA and our investment advisors. The way it will be going forward is where we do need to increase, for example, a culvert size, and wherever that is fit for purpose, then that will be all covered under the enhanced FAR or under the 100% as we are currently at the moment. Where we are increasing the previous asset, that will only be funded at our 72%. And in areas where it is seen to be uneconomic under the uneconomic policy of NZTA, we will at that point need to do a cost benefit analysis on those works. So it's not all the works across the sites that we're doing, and it will very much come down to the relationship that we have with our investment advisor and having these continued conversations about some of these works. So as we actually do frame up the works, as Blake has mentioned, the options analysis that we'll be putting together on some will be needed far more than on others, and the determination will be basically as we have on each of the sites going forward, having those conversations with NZTA. So the Build Back Better, in some areas, we will be able to increase the capacity of culverts and actually build back a more resilient pavement. And in some areas, we may not have the funding to be able to do that. Thanks very much. That is right. And then the last part through you, Mr. Chair, is from the audit perspective. Obviously, we've had the audit. Our audit results are there. The only issue was those 2 invoices. We put a recommendation back to NZTA, which has been that going forward within the EOC, we have a liaison officer from the Alliance as part of that emergency management team. This has been discussed with Don, and I believe is also part of what their debriefing that they've had previously as well. So it matches what we were going to do anyway, and that resolves any issues going forward. And that will close out our audit.
Thanks very much, Mark and Blake and Matt, for that very, very full report. Excellent. Any further discussions, Councillor? You have Councillor Moore and Sharon.
Through you, Chair Kerry. Just Mark, you spoke about uneconomic. Can you just expand on that for me just a bit, please?
Really?
So in some areas, we'll need to do a cost benefits analysis against the roads. This is basically breaking down because the short form way of looking at it is basically broken down by our traffic volumes. And where some of our lower traffic volumes are, when you run that cost benefits analysis, it'll come up with a general value of what the works that we can spend in there is. We have had a bit of a look at it and sort of reverse engineered the calculation to sort of see around about dollars per vehicle. And it's reasonably low. So in some areas, and this will only be in, I guess, some of the more peripheral areas, the ability to gain that funding from NZTA will be limited to a certain amount. And if council wished to put more in themselves, that would be your decision, but it would be unfunded from NZTA.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. If I just bring you back to point 6.3, Mark, when you're reflecting on the Build Back Better, you've said there it will cost TDC more increased resilience, and you've given a definition of what that might look like. But if we take a scenario that's in our district, and Blake and a number of you will know, from Wakawahine, that bridge there around and under the hill there, yep, so under the bluff, which I drove the other day, I thought, this is not, you've done pretty well to get it to where you've got it. Is that one of those particular options where it's going to be limited how to realign that part of the road? Is that one of those possible solutions which may be at risk that we have to look? I'm trying to find some real life examples of where this might. Sorry, Matt, I'm getting you.
That's right. Through you, Chair Kerry, I've got an easy example, I suppose, that I can share. So one of our councils, one of our neighbouring councils had a bit of a challenge where the whole sort of, I suppose, Build Back Better context has been taken quite literally. So they went and built or reinstated a bridge that was a one-lane bridge previously, and it served a very small community. And through that Build Back Better mentality, they've gone and built a two-lane bridge there. So I suppose Waka Kotahi's emphasis on Build Back Better is more around resilience to climate change, not growth. So, the Waka Wahine site, where we start talking about retreats, as an example there, there's potentially opportunities for other local authorities to go from a 6 metre pavement width to a 10 metre pavement width, which you would achieve through doing a retreat. Whereas for Waka Wahine, we've reinstated like for like, but the only option we had was to do a retreat, but we haven't necessarily built back better by making the 10 metre lane width, if that makes sense. So there are some issues there, and I think with some of the stuff that Mark's alluding to, Wakatahi are really sort of taking a bit of a step back and trying to clarify what a lot of this means, because there's people have made the most of it, put it that way. So, yeah.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, under the Huia Rail Cliff, it's like 3-lane highway. It's fantastic. Yeah, I know. It's still all gravel, but the work that's been managed to achieve has been stunning for the resources that you have. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, gentlemen, for that very full report. It was much appreciated. Thanks, Martin. The councillors, we've got a second of it. We give you Chair Steve and Peter. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Thanks very much to all. So Don, well, welcome this afternoon. And all in your hands for 7.5, your cyclone Gabriel. General comprehensive.
Thank you, Chair Kerry. Look, on 2.1, I can give an update now that we received 126 applications as the final number. And we worked through the first tranche of those, of which 30 we've had to go back to for more information. And I think 16 have on-farm visits, just to ensure that the information that was given was correct. Now that will be completed possibly by Friday, we think. So early next week, we then go through the second iteration of weighting all those applications. It's easy to divide by 126 and give them out 8,000 each, but obviously you must weight it on amount of damage per farm, how much they paid for, what has been insured or not insured, because it must be non-insurable damage. It is fairly complex, but we can work through it pretty quickly, we think, and hopefully get that money out the door, possibly by the end of following week. I have to say the reaction actually has been quite positive, in that I think there's a sort of a feeling, well, we actually got some money to do something with. And I think, to be honest, for some of them who've only applied, say, for a few $1,000s, 3 or 4 or 5,000, that will make a huge difference to them. So you can imagine if someone's getting up to 10,000, it's going to make a big difference. But I think as much as anything, it's not just the repair, it's the mental aspect of a lot of those farmers. So that's that one, and I have to say Mitchell has done a very thorough job on that as a non-farming person. He was absolutely ideal in that he didn't get himself bogged down in detail, and he knew exactly where he was going with that. The MPI Community Hub funding of 250,000. So Sarah Fountain has now visited 4 of the 8 rural hubs, and has now got quite an extensive list of what is required for each hub, so that they are ready for the next event. But I think it's going to be more than that. I think the communities are looking a little bit further ahead of how can we use these hubs far more than we're using them now. Some of them are 1 or 2 are council owned, most are not. They're probably only used once a month, if that at all, some of them. But they are looking to use them on a weekly basis if they're going to have to get some work done on those halls. Now, the funding we're getting does not cover infrastructure. However, we believe there is some funding left, either through GI or MB, that we could apply for, and we will apply for, if there are some infrastructure issues like re-roofing, something like that. We're pretty determined that council shouldn't be paying for anything in this. So that is moving on. I have to say, Sarah has done a really good job in that she's been very thorough in her reporting, and is now costing out the requirements for every single hub. What we will be hoping for is the funding that we're getting will cover 8 generators, 8 barbecues. So they've got at least that as a basic backup. And the barbecues will be commercial size, so you can do 50, 100 people easily. That we think we can cover. It's just that, as I said, any infrastructure requirement, we may not be able to cover out of that funding. I have to say MPI have been very supportive as well, and we're very happy that we covered the costs within recovery for the people. So every dollar goes into the actual project. Akatea Research Project. I have to say there was a little bit of unease in the recovery team about this project, because the questioning that was sent to us was more around recovery rather than moving on to the next stage of looking at resilience. And so we've had a couple of online korero with the Massey team, and we've come to an agreement how that is going to go forward. And it actually will add to what recovery has already done, and we think it's well worthwhile. And also, I think the Akatio community are very much aware of what they want as well. So that will go ahead very shortly. Tony has just completed a wellbeing survey, which she initially got 36 replies and then found that it should been hacked into, and some bot had put in about 500 replies, which messed it up a little bit. But however, she's working through all that, and probably by tomorrow, I think she'll understand what happened there. We thought we could get on top of those things. But that's also giving an indication of the fact, I think, that people are very much aware how much work has gone in to recovery, not through just the recovery team, but actually through government funding, which we were never sure we were going to get, but it has turned up. And on that, we still have now a 2-weekly meeting with DPMC, and there is still funding available. So we're trying to move ahead with the community hubs as quickly as possible. So if we can't get funding from one part, for say DIOMB, we may be able to get it through DPMC while the funding is still there, but we haven't got much time. Obviously, by the 1st of November, most of that will be gone or not available. Social wellbeing group, so that they've had a meeting looking at future events. One of the problems we've got coming up, obviously, is the weather, where it's, we've been told that we're going into a drought. Hard to believe last night, but very much so what we're seeing is the wind is accompanying the rain, and within a few hours of the rain, it's dry on top of you. And there are several beef and lamb conducting a couple of field days around making sure you're prepared for a drought and also doing feed budgeting. So people are taking it really seriously. So the team is now looking at how we get that information out without scaring the horses, because we know people are under real pressure at the moment. And for some of them, the last thing I want to think about is a drought. But being prepared now means that you can deal with it later. So it's getting that message out in such a way that people will accept it and say, yeah, I've got to do something. On the rural support, getting more one-to-one calls, just wanting some help. Might be financial, it may be just workload. Interesting enough, there was a trust and wills field day held last week, and it was absolutely packed. And it probably tells you that A, the average age of our farmers, and B, that many of them need to be thinking of the future. And particularly an event like this brings that into stark relief. I know, being in rural support for some years, that our biggest job was actually dealing with people over 65, not having a succession plan, and then wanting to sell the farm and realising on the sale of the farm, by the time they paid the trust out, there wasn't enough for them to retire on. It's quite a sad situation for working all your life. Apart from that, on the river cleanup, obviously now the trout sporting season's over, and Horizons are getting back into cleaning those rivers. The other part from that is Horizons was successful in obtaining 3.5 million for further river monitoring. They will be upgrading the monitors they have now, because some of them failed, and adding probably us up to another 5 monitors on the site to give far more early warning. So all in all, I think the last few weeks last month has been very successful from a funding point of view and actually getting work done.
Thanks very much for that report, Colin. We'll just go around the council table. So Councillor Farrer and then Fiona.
Thanks, Chair Kerry. Thanks for this very positive update, Don. It's great work that the team's doing. It reminded me, though, when I read the river cleanup section of your report, has anyone in the recovery team been involved in working with Horizons and the Ekatea community regarding the beach slash? I understand there's some communications with the fire department and ratepayers, and I wondered if anyone in your team were involved in that.
Yeah, well, only peripherally, it's actually Grant Cooper from Horizons who is now. So the meeting we had yesterday, he is getting in touch with both Hugh and the Ratepayers Association just to find out who's going to do what. I think Hugh is just inundated with amount of work at the moment. And I think it's given them time to sit back and think, what do we need to actually do? Because I think to begin with, it started off, let's clean the beach up to, ooh, hang on, yeah.
It's the most important thing is get access to what the beach is available there now, and so I'm pleased that you're on the at least involved in some of the loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Rona. Steve.
Thank you. As I've been working with Don each week, he's been updating me, and it's this team is doing such amazing work, and the extra funding and proactive manner you guys work in has really helped our community move forward. So I just want to thank you and thank your team for the work you guys are doing.
Oh, look, thank you very much for that. That is really appreciated, and they are a great little team, I have to say. And not only that, the people we bring from a Rural Support, Jane Tiley and Simon Hales, have fitted in so well. And everyone helps each other, and that's the way it should be. And it's a lot of fun too.
Thanks very much, both. Councillor Steve.
Thank you, Chair Cherry. It's two observations. What did I do wrong? Well done, team leader. Yeah, two observations. One, has anyone taken Horizons to task over their work practices? Because as we know, a lot of that stuff that was in the rivers, but if it wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened. And two, I see on the Merrill Relief Fund, it's more out of procedure really. I see there's 20 declines. So were they left field or what?
I'll leave that to the.
Thank you, Don. And actually, yes, Steve, declines we've actually had a number of stays in this room, fraudulent claims that have been quite easy to establish. We're working on another one at the moment, and it's quite disheartening because they certainly haven't, the claims haven't come through like we thought they would. We thought there'd be more than this, and that perhaps we've got rural folk that are just strong and they just want to carry on and they don't want to ask for help. But you know, we've probably used half the funds, and as a part of our role, we have to be seen to be doing our due diligence, because this is money that's been gifted by other people, and some of the claims have been in areas where a woman claimed for her car that was flooded in the main street of Paetua. We didn't even get a drop of rain that day. And we've just had another one that's been very suspect, and I've done a lot of background work on that now and found that. We also had another one where a resident was out of the country for 2 months and claimed for travel from the day after the cyclone. So social media reveals an awful lot. Get what they put on there. So we've been really drilling down into the ones. Some of them are obviously, when they send the photographs and they've got all the invoices and everything that they've done to put the claims together, fantastic, and there's no question mark. But when there's a question mark, we usually not decline them, but we reserve them, put them aside, so we've got time to spend looking further into them, and that's how we've been handling it, out of fairness to those funders that put their hands in their pocket.
Thanks, Steve and Ellie. Peter?
Thanks, Kerry. Not so much a question as a correction for Councillor Ward's. That stuff on the beach at Akateo is not called slash, it's called a seawall.
It's protecting your road.
There to protect your house.
And just to clarify through you, this isn't going to be a debate, don't worry, Chair Carey, but that's why I'm pleased and I concur with Dawn that over the period of time that we've had from when that first mention of let's clear the beach to now has shown the benefit of having that there to protect the foreshore. It's done a fantastic job. The issue now is we've now got a community thinking about just creating some access paths, not getting rid of the whole the whole lot. So I concur with you. It's saved the foreshore.
Councillor Mike.
Through you, Chair Kerry. Just one question. How's the lambing carving gone out there in some of these affected farms?
Well, interesting enough, we were out at Pongaroa last Friday at the memorial service, and without doubt, I think every farmer I spoke to and knew most of them have had an absolute roiler. The best year they've had for many, many years. The problem is now they've got so much on the ground to handle them going through to possible drought, and the fact that the prices aren't particularly good, and it's really hard to get killing space at the moment. But look, that aside, it's sort of lifted people, and I had to say, despite going to something that was pretty hard to take for a lot of people there was quite a positive mood in the room, and which was gratifying, to be honest, because I expected to go to something that was going to walk away thinking, hell, life's pretty tough. But no, and I think the other thing is that what happened to that farmer there has made other people think very carefully about how they're doing their work and how they're relaxing, how they're dealing with their family, how the family are dealing with the farmer involved. And everybody's reset themselves, I think. And most of the speakers were very much positive about doing something, to protect and look after each other. It's brought the community together. I'll say that.
Thanks very much for that, Don. I think all in all it's very positive, and we thank your team for managing this whole process very well. And I think it's good to get a report generally positive right across the board. Really.
Yes, look, and I think without a doubt, our minister at the time, who's no longer our minister, representative, did a really good job on behalf of Tararua, and it's been reflected in the money we've got.
We have a move and a second for the recommendation. Councillor Sharon, Councillor Noma, all in favour? Against? Great. Thanks very much, Don. Right, council will move on to capital portfolio. Matt's away today. Mike's away today, so we'll pass it on to Hamish to work through for that. So we'll skip over the capital portfolio report. We have probably the most important one has been discussed a bit, but you might like just to flick through them. Hamish?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Kerry. So just to set the scene a little bit, Mike's report there mentions that we're going to be doing a review of the projects with the new project owner being myself, and then that's partly to get my own head around them. But if you have a look at the graph, there's an awful lot of projects that are still in planning, and we're getting pretty close to halfway through the financial year. So things like the wastewater treatment plants are not 6-month projects. Certainly when you haven't decided on the actual final detailed design, and procurement will take a couple of months. All these things are going to push those into next year anyway. So my lens will be looking at what things we can do the planning for this year, get all our ducks in a row so that we can really hit the ground running when we actually have the right timing. So we're going to bring back a bit of a report on that as part of the quarterly report. So that'll give me confidence in what we're going to be delivering, and hopefully you too as well. So happy to move through the projects one by one if you like. I will presume that you've all had a quick squiz at them, and actually perhaps just if you've got any questions on them, we'll just take them as read.
Shall we? We'll take them as read, and if you like, just get questions from them generally. Should we start with Peter and then Noma? Peter?
Thank you, Gary. The Pahiatua Hillcrest School. What's the extent of that project? Is it just to supply a water to one point and or wastewater one point connection to the road, or does it go further than that?
I'm going to have to see if there's anyone in the room that knows the extent of that, but I'd be passing this off to Roger if he was here. So
looking at each other.
Sorry. Repeat the question, please, Councillor John.
The Hillcrest School, are we just supplying water to a point and or setting up a wastewater discharge pipe to the street, and that the contractor, when they decide to do something there, extends it around however many sections? Or are we going to a number of sections?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is that we're supplying to the boundary of the subdivision there, and then that'll be on the developer from there to do the next phase. So that's water supply, waste, and stormwater.
Is it not already there? I mean, there was a school there.
There was, but the subdivision will require upgraded pipes, I believe. So the capacity was the issue to be able to support that growth.
So Nathan?
Yeah, can I ask if the footpath for the Woodville footpath contract has been signed?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'll pass that on to Matt. I think he's probably got a bit of on what we were at with the Transport Choices funding.
So with the Transport Choices funding, so the contract has been signed with Waka Tahi. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it says that it's still waiting to be signed before the due date. Okay.
Yeah, so essentially the way Waka Tahi structure it is, they have key hold points within the contract. So the contract itself has been signed, but the funding is subject to meeting criteria within those certain hold points. So I may get the terminology slightly wrong, but as I understand, we're currently in the development phase and scoping phase. And as we work through that phase and get to that hold point, Waka Tahi will look at our scoping, they'll look at our plan for the rollout or the delivery of that work, and then approve that, which will release the next phase of funding. The challenge we have with this project is Waka Tahi have put it on hold essentially. So the scope funding and the design and funding has been approved. We have that cash in the bank, to put it simply. The next phase, so as we move in, I think it's sort of construction sort of type phase, that's on hold at the moment essentially. So the Transport Choices package across the country has been overprescribed within Waka Tahi. I think it's about $50 million overprescribed. So the Waka Tahi currently working through those projects at a national level to make some decisions about what's in and what's out. So there is risk that we won't receive that funding. I think it's a low risk. My personal opinion is it's a low risk, but there is risk that we won't receive it at the moment. Yeah, and you know what happened on the weekend, the elections and stuff may influence that as well. I'm not 100% sure, but unfortunately, we are at the mercy of them a little bit with that project.
Councillors, anything else? Councillor Scott?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was also going to ask about the footpaths because I was a bit alarmed to read the risk column when it comes to it. Now, in there, and I think this is what Councillor Chase was referring to, it has a particular line saying if the contract is not signed, there could be a risk associated with the change of government. So that risk is now apparent if a contract hasn't signed because we do have a change of government. So one thing that I might ask for this for us is if we could get a little bit more information. I know that's just a very small space to probably write quite a complex piece of information, but we have to be really mindful that in our annual plan process, we went out, this was part of our consultation, we actually went out and spoke to this. Definitely Councillor Johns and myself have been promoting the benefits as a win for the Woodville community. We have to do everything that we can to try and make sure that we get that funding. If the risk is low, what can we do to try and mitigate that risk? Can we get it signed? Can we get it delivered the best that we can? So I just really want to, and I know the team will already be thinking about that, so this will be nothing new, but I just want to emphasise the high importance that I particularly hold this project.
If I can just sort of add to that as well, I absolutely agree. I think the The opportunity for us to mitigate that risk as much as possible is to demonstrate to Waka Tahi that we're ready to go. And we're getting very close to being ready. I think a lot of the challenge across the wider country is that a lot of local authorities put their wish list in, so to speak. They're oversubscribed by that $50 million, and the projects that they've put forwards are nowhere near ready. They're high cost, high complexity projects. So, if we can show we're ready to go, that'll be mitigating their risk, I suspect.
Through you, Chair Kerry. Paetua waste treatment plant is totally different price to Ikitahuna. Why? What's the difference between these?
Brian, I think.
Sort of, I'm having a sneaky look to my left to Dave, who's had some involvement in both those projects. I think effectively the whole sort of design around it and it's different, but I can understand that one has more users than the other connected, but the price is currently lower, so I'll pass to my left.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Kerry, so the difference between Ikitahuna hasn't got a plant at all. There's nothing there apart from 2 oxidation ponds. Paetua has got oxidation ponds. It's got a treatment plant. It's got a screen. So it's got the basis there. They've just got to upgrade, upsize that. We put a DAF plant in there that did half the flow. We trialed that DAF plant a couple of years ago, which it only does half the plant. So when they upgrade that, they'll size it to the right thing. So that's where the difference in pricing is totally.
So supplementary to that, what is for Ikitahuna, because there's only 245 connections, what is the volume that goes through there in a day or 2 days? Not counting stormwater.
On a dry day when there's no rain for 24 hours, probably you used to work on about a cubic meter per household, or 1.5. I think that was when you sort of tried to get an average. But with businesses, you've got there's a slight difference, even though there's not many businesses there, but I mean the pub and what have you. So you probably, I think if I can remember rightly, it was something like 500 or 600 cubic meters a day, but it tripled or quadrupled with rainfall. That was where the difference was. So,
It's icky or Paetua?
Icky. Yep. It's quite a bit.
So you can't truck it away.
So we can't, and we actually looked at a few old councillors here from way back. We looked at piping it back to Paetua, 25 k's. It just didn't stand up. I think in the design work, I mean, Hamish mentioned before that we all think at the moment that it's a consultant's world at the moment where they're designing stuff that is gold plated, and they've got to come into reality and look at what is there and what conditions we have to meet. A lot of it's around the conditions, to be fair. We have to meet those conditions in that consent, and some of that is quite hard to meet. So you've got to put more precise gear in there, treatment side of it. So yeah, it is a hard one, but I'm sure the staff will go through and make sure that the design is going to be complete.
So in light of the figures that we're looking at here, does that change the scenario for piping that to Paetua now? Also bear in mind that we're doing this for 4 years. In 28, the consent changes. Do that.
Yeah, consent might not change, but we'll probably only get another short-term consent. It depends on how much data you get between now and the new consent, to whether you get a 20-year consent for meeting the requirement. That was where the difference was. The cost of the short-term consent was really tight and financially high. Yeah, I can't remember the figure that it was a fair few million that to get it back to Paetua, but there was a lot of consequences, a lot of difference in heights, and you know, it's a big call.
I think councillors, this is going to have to come to quite serious debate. And I don't probably think should be now, actually, but I mean, this has been a worry for us for quite a long time, and we're going to have some pretty serious looks at this. But Brian, you just had a comment, I think.
So we did have sort of some workshops around the master plan, around looking at what some of those affordable options were around centralising some of these systems. And the reality is that they're significant costs, but it is probably the way of the future to try and do that. And over time, it could reduce costs, but it would need significant investment up front, and we are effectively stuck with that 7-year consent. And we have inquired about changing it, but you'd effectively have to go back to the Environment Court, and it's very unlikely that they would change that anyway, and you risk even getting a shorter one or even more conditions imposed on us. So the really the only option we have is trying to get a more affordable solution for Eketahuna and what that might look like. I think we've just got to explore some other designs, and really, as Dave said, is really put some pressure on coming up with a minimal spec, not over spec solution. But I'm not an expert in that area, and costs just seem to be going up and up, and the more restrictions placed on it, the higher the cost goes up as well. And effectively, we will be discharging to land, so that creates other challenges.
So Peter, councillor Stephen.
Sorry,
So just one of the centralising things, what you got to think about too, is if you transfer the discharge from Eketahuna to Paeatua, you may not get that in that consent for Paeatua. You might struggle to get the discharge into that river. It depends on which, they're not all going to the same river at times. So it's that discharge point, how tough the consent conditions then become. Do they become 10 times worse than they were if they were separated? So you've got to take that into consideration as well. And then you may have to go to land irrigation totally. Like there's lots of anomalies amongst that. Sorry.
Well, thanks, Kerry. Matt, just going back to the Woodville footpaths, my understanding was that the contract had been signed with Waka Kotahi. The contractor, being Downers Manawatu, had been appointed after the process you'd gone through, and a deal was done with them, and that they were to start mid-October, which we're now past, or we're on now. To be told at this junction that it may fall over is just, to say the very least, somewhat upsetting. And I would like to think we need to be talking to Waka Kotahi today and putting pressure on them to confirm that this is happening, not just let it wait for them to get back to us at their leisure.
Yep, so that's through you, Chair Kerry. So we are talking with Waka Kotahi Weekly at the moment. You're correct, the contract has been signed and the contract has been let with Downer as well, but within that Waka Kotahi contract there's numerous conditions that we have to meet to get to those certain hold points for them to release the funding. So unfortunately we are at their mercy a little bit, but we're not just sitting on our hands either. As I said, we are meeting with them weekly, trying to push this along. That due date that you referred to, that was extended. I can't remember the time frames, but they extended that by a month or two. I think it was out to November now, before they'll make further announcements on where that's going to head. So, but yeah, we're not just sitting on our hands with it. We're certainly trying to push it along as much as we can. We're getting asked questions as well from our contractors and the likes and what's happening with it. So, the work that started was the scope and design works. That was to get us to that first hold point. So, we had resource on site surveying, digging potholes to look at underground services and the likes to enable that design to be completed. But the physical works, that's that construction phase, the funding hasn't been released for that, and we can't proceed until we get further direction from Waka Kotahi. But I share your views as well, Peter.
Well, the other concern is, I mean, if it's November, they notify you, you're then over Christmas and you're off work for 2 or 3 weeks. Nothing's not going to happen until the end of January at the earliest. And it all has to be, that money has to be spent by the end of July, doesn't it?
So they're gonna,
Well, it's got to be completed.
so they're gonna extend that as well, because they've delayed the process. The due dates are gonna be extended.
Right.
So in addition to what Matt and the team is doing, I will reach out to Linda Stewart as well, who's the relationship manager from Wakakotahi, and potentially it can be raised, whether it has or not, through the Regional Transport Committee. So I'm not too sure attended the last meeting, but it's stuff that we can also put pressure at different points as well.
There'll be something that we can bring up, because yeah, that would be really disappointing for the Woodford community if we were to lose that. Just yeah, huarahi to tohunu. See that we're wanting to, we're meant to complete by November 24. Apart from the emergency works, how does it look like? It's going to be a good season for that, Matt. We're going to get that all done.
At the mercy of the weather gods. So as per the current plan, yes, we will get it done by November 24. We need, to put it simply, this is across not just that project, but across our business as usual and emergency works as well. We need a good construction season. We haven't had one for sort of 2 or 3 years now. We haven't had a good long dry spell to really get into it. The current weather we are seeing, these, a sunny day, a rainy day, a sunny day, a rainy day, is so disruptive for our teams. And if that continues, which it's forecast to, we're going to have challenges, to be honest. I think referred to in the operations report in September, our teams responded to 90 call-outs just within the 1 month. That is quite normal for September, but if this weather continues as it's forecast to, we're going to have challenges. Yeah. Current plan is we're on track with though. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Matt. Brian and Hammond, I'm just wondering, Brian, just in our discussions around here regarding this, which is these important wastewater plant things, I'm wondering if that report and the previous council prior to the current council, we had that quite full report from WSP and we had a bit of a workshop about wastewater plants and centralising some of those. I wonder if that would be of value to perhaps pass that around to previous councils again, just to see what was focused on. It was a scary report numbers wise, but it set at options which might be of value to Mike and Scott. Anyway, just a thought. It was probably, was it August, September of 2022, August, June, might have been earlier, might have early 22.
Yeah, I can show them here. Could be sitting on the hub somewhere.
Actually,
But we'll have.
yeah, we'll have a look. We'll find the date and number and just pass it around, councillors. It's quite a full report, but it looked at centralising, and it looked right through from Norsewood through to Eketahuna and some of the options. So, yes. Yeah, they'd be scarier numbers now than then, probably. Thanks, councillors. Well, we've just thanks for that very full discussion, actually, on some pretty important issues. But if we're all done for the time, someone like to move and second, that's Irma and Peter, that we've set 1.1 of 7.6. All in favour? Thanks, carried. Thanks very much, councillors. Well, that brings this meeting to a close, councillors. I'd like to formally close it, but if you've just got 2 minutes for Brian before you, just for councillors to have a chat about something. So thank you very much.